And welcome back to the Nobi Dollar Show. We're live here Tuesday, January 4th. And the people on hold, stick around. We're going to take calls. I promise you, near the bottom of the hour, right to the top of the hour. Right now, though, very happy to have on, although V's not very happy, V Sphere, journalist and creator of a wildly popular show online called Under the Desk, which has more than 3.3 million followers on TikTok, which might be why V is not as happy as V usually is. So, V, welcome to the show. And we're going to talk about this and break it down a little bit about what's going on with TikTok because the ban is scheduled for January 19th. So nice to see you.
Nice to see you too, friend. This is wild. It's just wild what's happening right now. I don't think we expected to
So
be
tell
here.
people if they haven't followed the TikTok ban, because we did cover it a little bit when it first passed and we had you on
Mhm.
and talked about it and you were on what just happened. But remind people a little bit about what led up to the TikTok ban and what are the actual the key terms in it.
So there's been several attempts to ban TikTok, and a lot of it is based on the fact that many of our aged Congress members don't understand the technology. They're not native users. And so they've used TikTok as sort of this punching bag anytime that they want to talk about US-China relations and be like, we're going to punish China, we're going to ban TikTok. It's worth noting that ByteDance established its first headquarters for TikTok in Santa Monica all the way in 2017, so well before it was a popular app. They had merged with this other Chinese company called Musical.ly, and the original ethos of TikTok was sort of dancing videos, cooking how-tos, like very positive, joyful content. Right around 2019, Marco Rubio, a very known China hawk, had penned a letter to the then Secretary of the Treasury, Steve Mnuchin, asking for an investigation into that ByteDance Musical.ly merger. That is the first time that they started to say, hey, this has national security implications. Can we look at the merger between these two Chinese companies as this new merged app TikTok was gaining influence with America's youth? At that time, it was kind of like a nothing burger. Nobody was really worried too much about it. But when the pandemic hit, TikTok hit number one in the Americas as the number one downloaded app,
Oh.
exceeding American-based social media platforms. And that was the first time that Donald Trump tried to ban the app, partly with some input from Meta and American-owned platforms saying, hey, you should be looking out for us. We've got this big competitor. This isn't cool. And partly, again, to do with Marco Rubio and some of the China hawks saying, TikTok is tied to the Chinese Communist Party and we must ban it immediately without any kind of evidence. So that was the early days of it.
Mm-hmm.
TikTok maybe would have gotten banned if Trump had won re-election in 2020, because at that time he was hot for a TikTok ban. This was his number one thing.
Right.
He had a
I
big
remember.
trade war going with China. He didn't want Chinese apps here. He didn't want Chinese chickens here. He wanted nothing to do with China. So, but he lost. Joe Biden won. And it sort of started over for about a year and a half, 2 years after Joe Biden became president. Joe Biden also thought that TikTok had really helped him, get his message out there with young people in the electorate. So for about 2 years, we don't hear anything about a TikTok ban. Then, right about the Afghanistan pullout of August 2021, again, we're seeing first person narratives. We're seeing video that they're not showing you on mainstream media. We're seeing the pullout of Afghanistan going kind of difficultly. People are having a lot of feelings about it. So now Joe Biden's like, maybe we should ban the TikTok ban again. Like BuzzFeed,
Hmm.
BuzzFeed is publishing bombshell reports saying that Chinese employees can look up your birthday and all this spooky stuff. So now it comes around again. Maybe we'll ban TikTok. Nancy Pelosi. I know your people are politicos, so that's why I'm giving you kind of like the deep behind the scenes.
Sure. This is good.
Nancy Pelosi goes, remember she went to Taiwan? She went on that trip to
Yes,
Taiwan
I do. I remember that
and it
as
made
a
the
speaker.
tensions for Joe Biden
Mhm.
and John Kirby and Anthony Blinken were like, yo, we really don't, you could do what you want, but you going as the Speaker of the House to Taiwan, sort of putting us in a rough spot with China. And we kind of got a lot going on here anyway. When she did that, China obviously pushed back on us. We pushed back again with, well, we're going to ban TikTok. See how TikTok continues to just sort of be thrown in anytime we got a problem with China? So then in February of that same summer that Nancy went to Taiwan, Mark Warner, a Democratic congressman or senator from Virginia, introduced this thing called the Restrict Act. And the Restrict Act was dubbed by TikTokers as Patriot Act 2.0. It would have given the government access to game chat, your DMs, your telecom. It was terrible. So
Wow.
TikTok, you would see TikTokers, right, holding up like printouts of the 900 pages of the Restrict Act and being like, right here, it says this. That gets dropped. But now Congress picks up this idea that, TikTokers are maybe getting too civically liberated and too much involved in the government. So they propose this thing called the Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries Act.
Mm-hmm.
March 2023, we have the TikTok hearing where Shou Chu appeared in front of Congress and
I've watched some
fielded
of that.
all kinds of questions that had nothing to do with the security of the app. By this point, all the American data had been stored in Texas and Virginia. The two headquarters that oversee American operations are based in Los Angeles and New York. There's another headquarters that deals with the American version of TikTok in the Cayman Islands. It's completely separated from China. The CEO is Singaporean, which Tom Cotton could not understand the difference between Singapore and China. And we remember
He's
when he
not the
was
brightest.
Senator, I'm
Right.
Singaporean.
Mhm.
And it feels like a dog pile on TikTok. Like this is just going to be something nobody's willing to listen to. They invite the CEO in and they're presenting pictures and videos from YouTube and saying they're TikTok challenges, just complete mess, total joke. But then in March of 2024, the Protecting People from Foreign Adversaries Act gets couched in that must pass humanitarian aid bill that had the money for Ukraine and for the Sudan.
Oh,
It was never debated on its own merits. There's never been a floor debate on Congress or the Senate for the Protecting Americans Against Foreign Adversaries Act. It just got slid into the humanitarian aid package, and President Biden signed it. And that is the bill that we have been fighting in the Supreme Court since March of 2024. That pretty much brings us up to today.
vSphere just gave us a whole roundup. So let me ask you a few questions. How much ByteDance, BYTE Dance is the name of the company that owns TikTok. I
Correct.
remember watching some of that hearing on the House. So what is the connection between ByteDance and the Chinese Communist Party? Is there
There
a connection?
isn't.
I should ask you.
There isn't one. So ByteDance was founded by a ethnically Chinese inventor in, I think it was like 2005 or something. I have it actually in here. In 2012, ByteDance was
Mm-hmm.
born, and it was born due to $5 million in funding that came from a venture capitalist named Jeffrey Yass, the richest man in Philadelphia. He was the one who gave the money to the Chinese entrepreneur who created ByteDance. He holds more stock than any other person in the world. And in that same year, 2012, Jeffrey Yass, Susquehanna International Group, got Sequoia Capital, another American-based venture capital firm, to give a $100 million investment. That's the money that made
Wow.
ByteDance and TikTok. It's American money. It's an American company. The board is made up of the two inventors of TikTok who are ethnically Chinese and three Americans and one Frenchman. So by board seats, Americans outweigh any other voting entity. So that's when they say that ByteDance is owned by the Chinese or it's tied to the Chinese Communist Party. Both of those inventors live in Singapore. Both of them have taken largely a backseat because they're billionaires now based on this thing that they were able to sell to Jeffrey Yass. And Jeffrey Yass, an American, owns the majority of the 60% of global shares that are out there to own. So, that sort of irks me when people are like, it's a Chinese app. Like, it's not.
So I'm chatting with the vSphere journalist. So, but there obviously has to be some connection to China. Like, I mean,
Well, sure,
what is the concern? Right.
ByteDance
So
it was based in
what is the
China.
concern? Tell us what you hear. What does the people on the right say? And then you can fact check it for us, because obviously they keep saying things like, oh, the Chinese government's going to get your data or they're going to mislead people to care about people that we don't want them to care about because we're the American government and we
Right.
want you only to care about certain people on TikTok and they're tweaking the algorithm. So what is going on here? What are their allegations and what's the truth?
Well, when you look at the right, they flip-flop on it, right? When Trump was all for the
All right.
ban, they were all China hawking. They were all saying it's bad. China's
Right.
going to steal our data. They're going to influence our children. They're going to do whatever. They have never been able to prove it. And AOC herself has said she's in the congressional hearing. She's on the committees. There's never been 1 ounce of proof that anything has happened. Only that it could, hypothetically. Hypothetically, somebody could give your data to the Chinese Communist Party. Well,
What's your data? By the way, what is the data?
what
When
is
you sign
the
up for
data?
TikTok, what are you giving away to TikTok? Is it the same as when I sign up for Facebook? Am I missing
It's
something?
actually
Sincerely, I
less.
just don't. Okay.
It's less. So TikTok collects less data than Meta or any other platform does. And in fact, our data has been sold to the Chinese a million times by a billion different people. If the Chinese could get our data off of TikTok, then why did they just hack the three major telecom companies? Like, wouldn't they just go in and get it if that was the deal? Why would they have to like go through this effort of hacking AT&T and everybody?
Right. All right. But they're saying what you hear on the right is there's some national security interest. In fact, that's what they're arguing in the Supreme Court and in court
Well,
that
they're
yes, this is a
saying
restriction
that.
on free speech, but there's some national security issue. What are they saying? What is it?
So they're saying, oh, they could sell your data. They could be presenting propaganda to Americans. They could be sowing division on social media platforms amongst Americans. And what we have said all along is, yeah, and so do all of the platforms. So let's talk about comprehensive data privacy. Let's talk about content moderation that doesn't inflame
Yeah.
tensions and cause domestic terrorism or local extremism. And nobody wants to talk about that. The reason why the domestic or the national security line got put in there is so that Biden would sign it, because up to that point there was no, it was sort of like, okay, well, everybody does this, it's all social media. Well, if they've moved all the data to Texas and Virginia, I really don't see the point here. John Kirby himself has said on record to me that after looking deeply at TikTok, he did not believe that a unilateral platform ban was the right way forward. It did not meet strict scrutiny for him, so we'll see what the Supreme Court says. But he was like, I think there are other ways for us to mitigate issues with the genuine concerns that we have about all social media without annihilating the platform. I don't think we have to blow it up. There could be something like a warning that says, warning, your data could be sold to the Chinese, I guess. Or warning, you may get angry if you engage in this app. Like we put on cigarettes. Warning, you could get cancer, but you
Right.
have a freedom
Right.
to do it. Now, what we've argued also is that Americans actually have a First Amendment right to view propaganda from foreign nations if they want to. So that doesn't actually play either. So they couldn't get away with just banning it because it obviously infringes upon First Amendment rights and it's unconstitutional. So they added this line, well, potential national security threat. And because the TikTok ban has always been tied to tension with China, every time tension with China and America comes up, so comes up, oh, let's just ban TikTok, as if these two things go together at all. President Biden was like, well, I guess I believe my advisors and I believe these Congress people who put this forward, never looking at the economic impact that a ban would have, never understanding
Mhm.
the way that it would take 3 years to recreate the algorithm code if China would even give it to us or if TikTok would even give it to us, and not realizing that there are 7 million small businesses that operate on this platform. There are hundreds of thousands of creators who make their ends meet or have their full-time job on this platform. 150 million Americans use it to speak. It generates $24 billion in GDP. You can't just black
Wow.
out an industry like that.
And that's where we are. So the legislation has a deadline of January 19th,
That's
and it's
correct.
not banning it per se if there's a condition. The condition is ByteDance has to sell to somebody in one of Trump's oligarchs. I mean, that's
Yes.
really what we're getting at, aren't
Well,
we?
yeah, I
So
mean, for
this
real.
is because we live in Putin's Russia now. It's
Yeah.
called the United States of America. But so the wealthy, so Donald Trump, the ban goes effect January 19th. Donald Trump actually has the Supreme Court. Don't put the ban in effect. I can work out a deal, which would mean one of the oligarchs that he runs or that works for him
Well,
or with him
wouldn't
is
it
going to
maybe it would be
go ahead.
Jeffrey Yes. Jeffrey Yes contributed more to
Exactly.
his, campaign already. So there is no way that we ever get the algorithm from TikTok because it's not owned by the Chinese. There's not one buyer that could just give it to you. It would require all of the global investors to say, okay, sell it to America. And then what? TikTok operates in every country in the world except India because the Indian people said, we don't want TikTok in our country because they killed a bunch of our soldiers in the ongoing battles that India and China has in the mountains there. So, you know, I
Yeah,
that
that's interesting. They're like, we don't need any dance videos. We
no.
the trade off here. So the legislation though allows Joe Biden to extend the deadline
One
beyond January
time.
19th if he certifies that something is going on. So what can you share? What's the details of that and how long could he extend it?
So there's a couple escape hatches built into this Protecting Americans from Foreign Adversaries Act. One of them is that the president of the United States, whoever that may be, right now it's Joe Biden before the ban goes into effect, could offer a one-time 90-day extension for them to find a buyer. It
Mhm.
always comes back to this idea of find a buyer. So Joe Biden has not invoked that 90-day extension. He could decide that tomorrow and we're all set. We get another 90 days. That would be ideal, right? Because again, this bill has never been debated by the Congress or Senate. And I think that our legislators, in good faith, owe the public a debate. They should be looking at the platform, what it generates, what the consequences of an annihilation or a ban are, and then making decisions. And they never did that. So a 90-day extension gives Congress the opportunity to go through the bill, go through the technology, and do their due diligence, which I think they are owed, and so are we. The next thing that they can do is Senator Ed Markey from Massachusetts introduced a new piece
Hmm.
of legislation yesterday called
Yep.
it's like extending the TikTok Decision Act. And that essentially would give us 270 days for which to explore, one, for Congress to debate the merits of what's going on with TikTok, how the platform is used, and the economic implications of it. And two, potentially come to an agreement with the global investors on TikTok for what would satisfy reducing the threat to national security in America? Is it the Americans' data? Does that need to be fully spun off and firewalled? It already is, but does it need to be a little bit more? Is it spinning off control of the content moderation? Well, that's already done in California and Texas, but okay, sure, maybe put somebody else in charge of that that's an American. What do we need to do to satisfy the basic requirements of everybody getting a little bit of what they want? Um, and that I think is more likely. I think it's going to take more than 90 days for this to happen, but I'll take 90 days. The last thing is Donald Trump has said that he will just turn it back on. I don't know what that means. Donald Trump is not a
There's a
reliable
switch in his
narrator.
room.
Is not a
Right.
reliable narrator, so he thinks he can snap his fingers and turn it back on. What the ban actually does is it can't take it off your phone if you've already downloaded it. It gives the president the authority to direct Google and Apple, private companies, to remove the application from their app stores. And it eliminates TikTok's coding team from being able to access the platform to provide updates. So essentially, it would be like the batteries running out on your favorite toy. It wouldn't be a blackout. It would be like a slow over a day or two breaking.
And there was oral argument before the Supreme Court just last week on Friday, and Noel
Yes.
Francisco was representing TikTok. He though said it would be a death knell, that if this goes into effect, it's over,
Yeah.
and that it's even more. He's saying it's quicker in a way that, but perhaps he was saying that to make a compelling argument to the court. So we're waiting for the Supreme Court to make a decision, which could come down. And V thinks
Tomorrow.
tomorrow it might come down, or the next few days it's going to come down. What they're going to do? Are they going to uphold the law? Or they're going to say it violates the First Amendment and doesn't fulfill the strict scrutiny test when you're going to implicate the First Amendment. So we'll
Mhm.
see. But you're not hopeful. You were telling me right before we began.
I'm not. The Supreme Court announced that tomorrow will be the only day that they put out any opinions, and they'll start at 10 a.m.
Uh,
So we know that this is the only day before the ban goes into effect. The Supreme Court could say something. Now, they could offer a stay. They could be like, hey, we actually don't understand this, because it was clear that they don't understand this, and we need a little bit more time, which is totally fair. So we're going to give it a stay of, 30 more days or whatever more days for the Supreme Court to dig more into these arguments. That would be fine. That'd be great. Or they could simply say, because of the national security implication, and because ByteDance was told, well, if you sell, it won't get banned, we're not considering the way the words are exactly organized to constitute the American government affecting First Amendment speech so much as ByteDance not fulfilling their obligation to sell, and now it got banned. So they're kind of like, putting themselves in
mhm.
loops to make this happen. I do hope that the Supreme Court gives a stay. Word on the street is that they are leaning towards upholding the fact that Congress, the Senate, and President Biden all signed it. So,
Well, there are times they defer, with all things being equal, to legislation, but we'll see what happens here. So you told me what the right is saying, or what people are saying right now. Even some Democrats supported this, and
yeah.
President Biden signed it. National security, and you're saying, but those concerns are not real. So what is going on? Is there something we're missing?
I guess I'm missing it too, because I have been in the Oval Office 2 times. Granted, they take your phone, your watch, and your shoes before you go in there, basically, but like, they know my
Right.
platform is TikTok. We ran Kamala HQ, one of the most robust digital campaigns in existence in the history of the world, mostly on TikTok. Senators are on there, congresspeople are on there, cabinet members are on there. They've been on my show. I've been to the Pentagon. I've been to uh,
Wow.
Paris Island with the Marines, like all with the phone, all to
Wow.
show the world what's going on through this TikTok platform. So, how could TikTok be a threat to national security and such an important cornerstone to the way that we communicate with all of these people? I just don't think it totally makes sense. And I think in a lot of ways, one of the things I kept hearing both in the Supreme Court arguments and from President Biden was, well, we've never seen anything have this much bipartisan support. So I guess it must be good. And I'm like, see, there was also bipartisan not support. There were more people who didn't support it than did. So, like, maybe that's not the way to go. As far as national
Hmm.
security goes, I have to defer to my good friend John Kirby, who said he did not believe that platform annihilation made the country any safer.
And John Kirby's the Pentagon spokesperson,
He's
right?
a
Is that
great dude. Yeah.
right? So I just want people to know what I think everyone knows his name. Are there any, I mean, do you hear reports about anything close to a deal? Like someone buying it? Like this could
There is
save
no
TikTok?
sale. No, and that's some of where some
No.
of the best misinformation comes from. There is no way to
Mm.
sell it because again, there's not a single owner. You'd have to get it's 60 TikTok is owned 60% by global investors and Jeffrey Yass owns the most and he's already an American. So like what's he going to do? Sell it to himself? It just there's not a way to sell it, but some of the greatest misinformation has come from like a Bloomberg report yesterday that I don't know who wrote it, but they were saying Chinese officials maybe would sell to Elon Musk and TikTok
Oh my
themselves were
God.
like, they're not going to. I was like, there's no way. First of all, Elon couldn't take it because of antitrust issues, which is the other thing we ran into. It's been going on for 4 years. We've been through the rounds. There was a period of time when Walmart wanted to buy it. Then it was Microsoft
Hmm.
was maybe, then Meta. They ran into antitrust issues with Elon, Zuck, and Snapchat for some reason. Can't buy it because of antitrust issues. There was it just this the idea that Elon Musk would buy it is pure fiction. That's the way that TikTok describes it. That's never even been an option whatsoever. He's not even involved in any of the negotiations of spinning off pieces of it to sort of like satisfy Congress's
Mm-hmm.
concerns. There's another guy who has something called Project Liberty out there. His name is Frank McCourt. He's partnered with Canadian business entrepreneur Kevin O'Leary, aka Mr. Wonderful from Star Trek. Star Trek. Oh my God, I'm so tired, Dean.
Shark Tank.
Shark
It's
Tank.
okay.
Shark
Shark Tank.
Tank.
I know who Kevin O'Leary is. Yes.
So they and those two are in cahoots to say they're going to make a bid for TikTok. And the headline on them was Frank McCourt and Kevin O'Leary make a bid for TikTok with go ahead from the White House. What does that mean? The White House didn't give them any kind of go ahead. It's just like a flashy headline. There's no one to bid to because TikTok's not out for bid. So it's like nonsense.
What are you going to do if it's banned? I mean, you make
Cry every
you're
day.
living, although you have other platforms where you have a robust following, but not
I do.
3.3 million followers. So what do you do? Just lean into Instagram or YouTube? What's your main place platforms?
So what I'll actually do, I mean, I have not slept in weeks. I won't until the
Sorry.
very end of this because it's just so important. And I think so many people in the American public are catching up on what happened and the economic apocalypse that it will be and how many people's lives will be negatively impacted. And also the great grief period that we will enter, losing a lot of the community that's been built on this platform and the joy that we have. So if the ban goes into effect, then, I'm at the same time that I'm petitioning Biden and everyone else to try and like just give us a little bit more time to show you what's happening. We would be petitioning Trump to do the same. Go up, say you said you would turn it back on, turn it back on. So I think for me, I'll never stop fighting for TikTokers and for the community that we've built. I have also over the last 4 years done things like, I freelance at Washington Post and NBC and like I have a YouTube following and a Substack and an Instagram and all that kind of stuff. But it'll be a heartbreak. It'll be devastating, and I think the economic implications for uh, most Americans will be significant, and that's what I worry about most.
With the fact that TikTok skews so much for younger people, do you think politically that for Trump, if he were to turn the switch back on, whatever you want to call it, that it does, just from a political point of view, objectively, it helps ingratiate Trump to younger
Sure.
voters?
Oh, it does. It surely does. There are two things I worry about with this that I have, tried in every which way I could to impart to President Biden and his advisors and anybody who might be listening right now. Um, President Biden's legacy is at stake here, not just if he becomes the president that banned TikTok and pissed off all the kids and all the creators and all the small businesses, right? President Biden, history will remember him as a far greater president than the president ever treated him. He's been a fantastic president. And some of the things that he's done, just thinking about the CHIPS Act, infrastructure, and Inflation Reduction Acts, those are monster projects that nobody else could have
Mhm.
done, that he owes to his, they should be counted in his legacy. But Trump will be the one doing the ribbon cutting on all those new bridges and trains and investments that we made in all those hard fought ones. So does Joe Biden really want to end his legacy here with stepping down and not, he was going to run for president, then he wasn't. And then everybody was all over him over if his mental acuities were there. So you got that going against you. The Hunter Biden pardon, that going against you. Plus you ban TikTok. Plus apparently there's going to be a ceasefire on Trump's like first or second day. And he's going to be
In
the one
Gaza,
to
they're
turn,
holding it up. Yeah.
I know. And he's going to be the one to turn TikTok back on. And he's going to be the one to cut the ribbon over the next 4 years on all the stuff that Biden and we built. I think it's really hard. Also, Joey, I'm like your biggest advocate, and my platform's
Yeah.
TikTok. I can't talk about your legacy or fight for you if you shut me down, my guy. Like, come on.
I hope he does the 90 days and then it goes on Trump's watch. And
Yeah,
then
see what he
then it could
does.
be worked out, but at least it didn't get shut down
That's
on a
right.
Democratic president's watch because we don't want that in the big
No.
picture. I want to touch on two last things here. What's your reaction to Meta with
Mhm.
Mark Zuckerberg giving $1 million to Trump
Mhm.
and getting rid of DEI programs and ending fact checking on Facebook, which is the biggest impact on all society?
Well, here's the thing. Like I don't know. This is maybe going to be a hot take or a bad take, but it's the one that I have right now. And remember, I haven't slept
Sure,
in
go
weeks.
ahead.
Um, Zuckerberg and everybody giving $1 million to Trump's inauguration is like me giving you 50 cents right now to go get a Coke, right? Like it doesn't mean anything to them. They're like, all right, go have your little Coke and that's fine. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't care. It cost me nothing really.
Right.
I think those are table stakes when you're dealing with trying to placate a potential dictator and you don't want to be the target. And he is responsible for an awful lot of people in a huge platform, like whatever, $1 million is nothing, right? Um, I think when it comes to him eliminating the fact checkers, I listened to him on Rogan for my podcast, American Fever Dream. We did like a recap of Zuckerberg on
Mhm.
Rogan. And I think him getting rid of the fact checkers has to do, I do think it's a little bit appeasing to the right. Like, oh, who are they? He lied about the fact checkers being based in California. They've been in Texas this whole time. He's adding community
Wow.
notes to, yeah, that just came out this morning.
Oh, I didn't know
Um,
that. Interesting.
Yep. Doing community notes, being like X. I think I was asking actually Kelly at the Poinier Institute this morning. I was like, is there any chance that this is a good thing? That because the fact checking was only happening at the absolute, like less than 1% of stuff on Facebook was getting fact checked. And now everybody's getting community notes. Maybe we have a chance to correct more stuff. She's like, yeah, we also have a chance to be corrected by people who don't know anything. And it's all equal. And I was like, okay, that's fair. So on community notes, I'm still up in the air. I want to see how it goes. And then when it comes to what was the last thing? It was like, oh, the DEI. Uh,
I mean, I just threw it all together because it all is part of a package. It's like here, Donald Trump, don't bother us. Let us make more money. Don't
yeah.
target me. That's the biggest thing was the fact check, and that affects society
Well,
mostly.
the DEI
But yeah,
thing I do want to
DI.
touch on because that is tied to the Supreme Court's decision over the summer that said that you can't do affirmative action in admissions for colleges.
Schools.
People remember that, but they don't remember that there were a ton of state and federal laws that came off of that also essentially banned DEI or made DEI something you could be sued for in a company. So
Hmm.
I do think you're going to see a lot of people revoke DEI, but it's tied to state or federal laws that mandated that they not use those words. It doesn't mean that they're not going to have diverse workforces in some ways. And to me, a lot of my folks, in the queer community are like, man, I don't feel safe anywhere now. And I'm like, don't do that. Okay. A lot of that is to bum you out. We know that diverse teams are more profitable, are more enjoyable. The company culture is great. They're not going to just make the company culture shit because they're so anti-woke, right? Like I think they're placating people. And I think, the Supreme Court decision forced a lot of big companies, especially publicly traded companies, to roll back their DEI on paper. We'll see how this turns out in real life. I want you to remember Zuckerberg is got three sisters, three daughters, and his entire company, Facebook, has been held up by women like Sheryl Sandberg and every other woman he surrounded himself with. He could say that there's not enough masculine energy in the workforce, but it is because he time and time again chooses to surround himself with women. So I gotta say, like what he said on the broadcast and the way he behaves are different, and I'm gonna hope for the best. I guess I remain cautiously optimistic.
I saw one clip where Rogan's like, "You're looking strong. Your neck is so big." Mark Zuckerberg. I'm like, "Oh my god!" I'm like, "What is this? These guys." I mean, I'm happy they found love.
Do you know
Maybe
what he said?
they.
He goes, "Your neck is so big, dude." He's like, "Yeah, well, I knew once I was going to be fighting, I wanted to make sure that my brain and my head was safe. So the safest way to protect your brain is to build your neck." Like he's such a nerd. That's why I said on our show, I said, Zuck is a nerd and Rogan is a Neanderthal, and it was interesting to watch them try to like out masculine each other. But
Well,
you know,
and Rogan is like fire bad, and
yeah,
Zuckerberg's like, "I have an algorithm for fire,"
yeah. He's
and I
like,
was
I
like,
kind of
"Okay."
enjoy the warmth. It's not that bad.
Right, the fire. The and very last thing, because I do subscribe to your Substack, you
Thank
wrote an
you.
article about digital declaration of rights,
Yes.
and share a little bit because big tech is insane. And the oligarchy is here, my friends. We talk about it a lot on the show, and that we should be rising up on the right and the left to fight the oligarchs. It's my mission that I've been trying so hard. But what is the Digital Declaration of Rights before we wrap up?
So I work with this company called Design It For Us, and we travel to colleges across the country to talk with students and experts about responsible technology use. Because so often, older people are the ones who are saying what responsible technology use is, but they're not in the modern world. They don't know what the actual pitfalls and dangers are. So sometimes they're making rules or fighting for things that are obsolete tech at this point. And at each event, we polled students about their social media experiences, and then from the results, we created this collective declaration of digital rights, which is based on the direct feedback of students on college campuses across the country. It basically represents like a youth-led demand for social media companies and policymakers to prioritize just very basic things: safety, well-being, and the values of young people by addressing the harmful effects of technology and shifting some of that decision-making power on what those safety regulations should look like to the actual young people who are the users. So again, it's about putting power back in the hands of people, putting power back in the hands of native users of these technologies, because I think it allows us to be a lot more agile in recognizing true threats and tamping them down,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to over censoring people or over regulating them. So you can check it out. The group is called Design It For Us, and it's the
Mm-hmm.
Declaration of Digital Rights. If you go to the link in my bio on any of my platforms, we are still taking comments. So you don't have to be a teenager to comment. Like if you check it out and be like, "Hey, actually, I think you should add this, or maybe you're missing that," before we like fully publish it. Thank you for
I would
asking
love to
about
see
that. I
this,
appreciate that.
sure,
I'm
and I
really
would love to see
passionate
a Bill
about
of
it.
Rights.
Yeah.
No, and I'd love to see. I had Congressman Ro Khan on my show many times, and we've talked about the Bill of Rights that he proposed.
Yep.
This is so needed that we have rights because the social media platforms are our community and our
That's
way we
right.
exchange. And you get blocked, you don't even know why. I don't mean from another person. I mean they suspend you. Like why?
Yeah.
Who do you turn to? Good luck getting some from Meta on the phone.
That's right.
We should have federal legislation to ensure that we have certain rights, and they don't want to do that. They'll block TikTok, but they won't work on our rights as users because they don't want to because big tech doesn't want it.
And we've
They
seen it.
want to make
Yeah.
us serfs. They
We've
want to
seen it
make us
time and
serfs.
time
That's
again. They have Section 230. We have nothing. We need just an agreed upon code of basic rights that say, hey, this is the social contract we're making online. This is the exchange that we have. And there needs to be like a recourse for, complaints and criticism.
sure, exactly. And fines and penalties if they
That's
don't
right.
adhere to it. The same way
That's
like
right.
airlines with their Bill of Rights that you have there. They keep you on the tarmac for too long. But well, V, thanks. And if people want to follow your work, where do you want them to go? You
So
tell
you
me.
could get the
You tell.
ideal is you go to the YouTube, right? Because that's the only
Right.
monetized platform if TikTok gets banned. So at Under the Desk News V on TikTok, or Under the Desk News, if you Google it, everything will come up, underthedesknews.com. And then I have a podcast that comes out twice a week with Sammy Sage at Betches. It's called American Fever Dream, where we explore the oddities and absurdities of our uniquely American experience.
Sounds great. And I wish you the best with TikTok. It should not be banned.
I
There's
know.
ways to
Thank
alleviate any
you.
concerns. I wish I'll be rooting for you. All right, V, nice chatting with you. Have a great night.